Okay, so I hope you don't mind, so others can maybe use this audio later. My name is Shiadelaja. I'm the head of growth at Gridley. Um, Background is I'm a teacher, education, first degree Obafemi Law University, and second degree master's in school media. I'm from University of Ibadan. But that's not as important. What's really important is that I super excited to be in the midst of teachers because I consider myself one, even though I don't get as much opportunity to be in the classroom these days um, as I used to. But it's something that I'm super passionate about, and I'm really looking forward to us exchanging knowledge, sharing thoughts today. Essentially, today I'll be talking about the Pareto Principle and how to apply it in the classroom, how the knowledge of the Pareto Principle can change the things that we do um, in our classrooms today. So I really want this to be as interactive as possible. And really, I don't have Private principle is just a principle, right? Like any other principle. There are tons of principles out there in management that people apply and it can be interpreted anywhere and can get any type of results. Principles in business are just like, principles in management are just like law of nature in science, right? Law of nature is that anything that goes up, come down. Okay, and then we also have like the principle of flotation, Archimedes principle in physics. All of these principles are just things that guide this. We know that certain type of weight will float on water. We know that um, certain type of input to get certain type of outcome. We just know that, right? And then what these principles have done is just help us learn them. So I'll give a sense of what Pareto principle really is. And so Pareto principle, I used to think that was coined by a man called Pareto, and yeah, it's true. It was called by this Italian economist. So the origin is in economics, right? It was coined by an Italian economist called Wilfredo Pareto, and he lived sometime between 1848 and 1923. And this is economic principle started from certain observations. For instance, do you know that 80% of the world's wealth is owned by 20% of the world's population? Do you know that? Okay. Do you also know that you wear only about 20% of your entire wardrobe? Like typically just wear only 20% of your entire wardrobe. You have more clothes, you probably like a lot more, but you only wear only 20% typically. Do you know that only 20% of the diseases in the world cause 80% of the deaths? Do you know that only 20% of maybe the world's only 20% of the world safety issues cause 80% of most accidents? So if you see that it's all of these 20% of everything has like 80% of all the impact, and it's true in education, it's true in finance, it's true in other sectors, right? So let me ask, are there some 20 to 80% that you've observed personally or that you think might be happening around you? You can drop messages in the chat box today. Whether within the classroom or outside the classroom, what are some 20% that you've seen that seem to have impact on most 80%? Yet I'm open to learning from you as well. What are some of these? Before we even delve down to how do we tie this in the classroom? Let me see. Do you know that let me remember some popular. Why I wait for you to just mention some of yours. Okay, I heard that there is also this rule that even in a sales team, right? Only 20% of the entire team, 20% of the entire team are responsible for 80% of the results of the entire team, literally. And this is true even not just from teams around me, but from like bigger teams and the result generally. So as all of the results, okay, peace, less than 20% of the people control 80% of the world economy. That's really, really, really true. Like less than as big as the world is, right? Less than 20% of the people control 80% of the world's wealth. That's very true. Please. Thanks for sharing. are there other 80-20 rules that you've seen, that you've observed, that you like to share with us, everyone in the chat? Let's come up with it together. I'm really interested in learning, getting insights from you. Yep, please do well to drop them in the chat box, as we go on. But essentially that's your 20% rule. Do you know that, in fact, in the examination, only 20% of the course contents, students are only examined on only about 20% or less of the course contents, meaning that students who actually know how to pass the exam can optimize for the 20% and still pass an exam, even when they don't understand the majority of the learning content. Right, exactly. Right. So it turns out that most of the times we only need to, many of the goal is not to say, oh no, don't be absolute, don't be thorough in everything. The goal is to say, what if you can recognize the 20% that you need to improve on, and what if you can recognize the 20% that impacts most of your results, because that then changes everything, right? So the goal is to help us look at what are those 20%, and as teachers, as lovers of education, I recalled sometime during the week, I think about 2 weeks ago, in our regular daily newsletters. Now, if you are not receiving our newsletters, you really should you really should sign up for our newsletters. We share very insightful things on really for schools and for schools and for teachers, week in, week out. So one of our newsletters, we looked at how to apply the Pareto Principle, in education, and we've learned that many times, in fact, it is 20% of a teacher's action that leads to 80% of learning outcomes. Yeah, you're right. That results that you see, those results of your students, they're usually caused by 20% of your actions. So meaning that 80% of the actions that you do, within the classroom, outside the classroom, don't really lead to learning outcomes as much. So meaning that if you want to improve the learning outcomes of your students, what you want to do is to, first of all, identify the 20% that's you need to identify 20% that drives this result, and then you can now optimize for them. Does that make sense? Great. So let's look at it. We are going to come up with a sheet together, and what you want to do for me is, can everyone? Great. Tamila is asking a question. How can I identify 20%? Great. And that's exactly what we want to do in this call. That's what we want to do over this call. We want to help ourselves identify the 20%, and then think about how to scale that up, And the first rule is, of course, is that you know your 20%. And you're right. We want to know your 20%. So how do we identify 20%? One, let's do this. Can we all come up with a list of the most common activities that we do in school, top 10 activities that are common, top 10 teacher activities that is being done across all schools. So I'm going to share a doc, which we are going to fill together in this call. And my goal will be, so it's an impact check document. You can also find a link to it, so you can work on it personally after this call. But for the sake of this call, I'd like us to come up with something together. So let's come up with an impact check document. Looks like this. So essentially, it's a document that allows us to track our most common activities, right? So what I want to do now, right now, is to put in text, and let's identify it. So let's see. So essentially, what we want to do is to say, what are the most common teacher tasks? And then we are going to rate them on how impactful they are. So if you want to just participate in this, what you can do for me is to just, in the chat box, type in what are some common activities that you do as a teacher in school. Let's list them out. Once an activity seems to be repeated by 3 teachers, we are going to put them on this list. So from following the school bus to conducting assembly, can you just drop your activities in a sentence or in one word? in the chat box. Let's look at it together, and let's see what are some common activities that we do as teachers. Yeah. So I'm waiting. Chat box. See, you don't have to think deeper. It does not have to even be. You don't need to consider it an high impact activity. It just needs to be something that takes your time. Anything that takes more than 10 minutes of your time in school, please can you put it down? Okay, pop quizzes. Yes. Can you write anything that takes up to 30 minutes? Let's start with anything that takes up to 30 minutes of your time daily as a teacher. Can you put it in the chat box? I'd like to see that. What takes up to 30 minutes of your time daily as a teacher? Writing and evaluating. Thank you. So writing and evaluating, I take that as writing notes, and evaluating is like what's conducting homework assignments. Is that the right? If they are two separate things, I mean, it helps if it's separate. Evaluation. Okay, so I've said evaluation as the task that is reoccurring. So I'm just going to put evaluation on the sheets by popular demand. Okay, like I said, anything that takes up to 30 minutes of your time daily, we want to know them, want to put it together, and want to rate it on based on the level of impact. In fact, what I'm going to do is to create a new sheet. So I'll just stop sharing this and open up a new sheet. But please keep the message coming. Preparing lesson notes. Interesting. Thank you, Eniola. Yes, let's drop in more. I'll just put up a new sheet now, and we can create one together. Okay, great. I think I found what I wanted. And we'll just start now. All right, so for the sake of this, okay, I finally found the black sheet that we can use. So I'm just going to share my screen again, and let's start. So I've seen preparing lesson notes, teacher and evaluation, making quizzes. What are some other activities that take up to 20 minutes? Just think about a regular day in school and say, okay, I get to school by so time. What takes my first 30 minutes? What takes my next 30 minutes? What takes my next 30 minutes? And let's come up with it together. Remember, you can still put it up in the chat box. The goal is that we want to look at most common, most repeated activity and evaluate them on level of impact so we can optimize for the most impactful ones. Yes. Okay, so for this sheet, I've seen I'll just add text. So one of the things I've seen is preparing lesson notes. Writing lesson notes. All right. That's one activity that I've seen that has been repeated. And second most repeated activity, I've seen evaluation. So I'll just write conducting assessment. Yes, what else take more up to 30 minutes of your time daily as a teacher? Answering students' questions. Okay. Answering students' questions. Yes. The filling communication books. Okay. Preparing report sheets. Preparing report sheets. Filling. Finally, somebody mentioned teaching, actual teaching. I was waiting for it since. Filling communication books. Rafiat, I hope that when we are discussing, you'll be able to tell us what this covers, what this really looks like, in communication books. Um, so teaching. So I, what else? Very important sheets. Are there any other activity that takes up to 30 minutes daily that we are not capturing? I know a lot of other activities. For instance, I know teachers who conduct the assembly. I know teachers who maybe even join the school bus. I know teachers who meeting with meetings, interesting. You know, admin meetings, admin meetings. Uh, yeah, I have three slots more. So what are some? Like I see that in our head, we're already categorizing based on how impact they have, not even maybe on how much time they consume. Nobody spends time in chemistry lab here. Nobody. Um, do you want to look? Who spent time in chemistry lab yet? Oh, my screen sharing is paused. Okay. What other activities? Just to give us a sense of what we've filled in so far. Um, writing lesson notes, conducting assessment, asking students questions, preparing report sheets, filling communication books, teaching, admin meetings, monitoring extracurricular and club activities. That's something that takes a lot of time. Teachers sweat uh, trying to prepare for inter sports, trying to prepare for art class, club activities. Yeah, I think and so it's like supervising monitoring activities. Can take two more. Two more. Um, yes, two more. What other activity takes your time as it conducting assembly? Yes, I know that a lot of teachers like the first 2 hours, yeah, somebody is welcoming students coming in, and then somebody is making smiling at parents, and doing all these things. And assembly, first 3 hours for some teachers is gone every morning. So you lost 3 hours out of the 8 hours of instruction. So yes, conducting as conducting assembly is something. But I understand that due to COVID-19, most schools cancelled assembly. As assembly resumed in your schools, um, let me know if you're in a school and that has resumed conducting assembly. You can just drop a message in the chat box. They can take one more activity. Oh yes, interesting. If you ask conduct assembly, no, that's interesting. Yeah, one more activity that takes teachers' time. So while we come up with that, can we now define impactful together? Um, and this is the part where I'm going to democratize this. I'm going to democratize this. So I want to discuss, what really makes it impactful. Because Tony, you started assembling your school. Interesting, interesting. So that means most schools are conducting assemblies now. That's really interesting. Okay, let's have a conversation on the next phase. Now I want to discuss what really makes something impactful and understand that in fairness, impactful means different things for different people. Um, do we agree that what you consider impactful may be different from what the parents consider impactful, and maybe might even be different from what your school consider impactful? Is there a chance that exists? How do we agree on what is truly impactful in the classroom? I think the first way to start answering that question is to say, let me put a face to it first. I'll just stop sharing the screen so that we can talk for a moment. Um, okay, stop sharing. All right. Let's agree on what makes something truly impactful and why what can you comment in the chat box? Tell me what you consider most impactful. One thing, what's the most impactful thing that you do as a teacher? What's the biggest impact you can have in your classroom? Do you want to drop a message and maybe you can just drop a one word message and I can maybe mention to one or two persons to speak. But let's agree on impact. Now we've listed out activities. For those just joining us, we are discussing the Pareto Principle. The Pareto Principle is a principle that tracks impacts, and it's originated from economics. And essentially the theory is that 20% of your actions lead to 80% of your results. And that's really true across boards. In fact, we all practice the Pareto Principle, even subconsciously. For instance, you wear certain type of clothes almost every time, and then you have this certain thing that you never touch. So you use 20% of your wardrobe many times, most frequently. You talk to 20% of the people in your contact list most of the time. So you understand there's always 20%. There's always usually 20%. In fact, we figured out that the world's economy, all the wealth in the world is held by less than 20% of the world's population. Okay, so now back to education. We know that only about 20% of the teachers' activities responsible for 80% of the impact. So we want to say that, and the way to now optimize for the 20% is to identify, the list of activities, find out the most impactful ones, and think about how to optimize for them. So we are at the point of identifying the activities. We listed out certain activities, and I want to discuss what makes an activity really impactful. So the question is, what makes something really impactful? What's the biggest impact that you can have as a teacher on your students? What's the most impactful thing that you can achieve as a teacher? Somebody wants to speak. It's a town hall. It's super interactive. Yep. You want someone to go ahead and speak. But what's the impact? What's the biggest thing? If you're a teacher, what do you think you should be judged by as a teacher? Am I allowed to call names? If you don't, I maybe can call names if you don't drop a message in the box. But what should you be judged by as a teacher? Yeah. Knowledge, Damilola. So knowledge of what? Teacher's knowledge, student knowledge. So I should be judged based on how much my students knows, right? That's what Damilola dropped in the chat box. Who agree that knowledge is the biggest impact that a teacher should have on students? What other things? The way to judge impacts is what should I be judged by? What's the real purpose of something? That's like the impact that the thing should have. What's the original design? Attitude. Okay. So knowledge, attitude. Yeah. Use of instructional materials for maximum impact. Okay. Use of instructional materials for maximum impact. Thanks, Tony. So we are listing out some of the mastery of the students, mastery of the subjects, and students' understanding. Okay. So as a teacher, you should be evaluated based on your mastery of the subject and based on how much your students understand something. Interesting. I have one or two things I'm missing so that we can now begin conversation from there. I like the conversation so far. Thanks for everyone contributing. Thanks for contributing to the body of knowledge, as we say in the academics. Yep. So let's look at it. What's the and let me tweak the question in a different way. When a parent meets a teacher, when a parent is happy with a teacher, what makes the parents happy? What's the one thing that you can do to make? What's the one thing that makes parents most happy? Happiest. What's the one thing that makes students happiest? What's the one thing that make school happy with you? And I'm not saying ideally. I'm saying that in reality today, what do you do when a parent comes to you and say, "Uncle, thank you very, very much. I'm very grateful. In fact, take this thing." What's the thing? What has triggered that? Yep, I want to hear your opinion. And then once when the school principal comes in and says, Mr. Shea, I'm very, very impressed with what you've done. Take this. What is that one thing that you've done? Can we learn together? And I'm not saying ideally, I'm saying that in reality today, let's start with, where should we start? Okay, let's start with parents. what makes parents super excited about a teacher? What makes what makes a parent feels that, yeah, my child has a good teacher? Yes, you can drop a message in the box. I'm waiting to read out the messages. Parents are happy when you tell them the truth about the academic strength of their child. This like, well, let's start from the beginning, right? Ikena Obaji, I like your comments. Parents are happy when you tell them about the truth of academic strength of their child. That's very, very interesting to know that. Good performance and change of attitude in students. Fentola, thank you very much. Okay, so let's start. So when parents send, according to, let me quote you, so that you know so before. According to Obaji, right? Feels like when the parent is saying thank you very much, they're saying it because you've just told them the academic strengths. That I told them the reality, right? That's one. And then Moshood said, good performance and changes attitude of students. So when the parent sees that and see my child improving, I can also see the attitude of this child changing. I'm grateful to the teacher. So that's secondly. So we see academics, analytics. So analytics is one thing, improvement is another thing. And then Moshood said knowledge they take from school and can be applied to their daily lives. That's something. So when a child says, "Oh, mommy, stop!" I remember one time my younger sister she was younger then, a lot younger, and she was in boarding school, and then she returned home and she was spreading. We typically would spread clothes the others way, right? Like how do I say it in English? Sorry, I'm lost. But ideally we turn the clothes the other way and then we spread it. And then she came around and then she was spreading it the way we would have worn it. And we're like, how would you do that? And then she said, my teacher said the clothes makes direct contact with your body and should protect the parts that makes direct contact with your body. And we're like, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Learn something in school. And then for that period, we all kind of just agreed to that style of spreading. So you see that parents are impressed when their kids come up with something from when they bring a knowledge that is transferable. Okay, I have a few new messages that I should read. When there's a positive change, both in attitude of the pupils and also when they can relate with what they are being taught. Exactly. So when students internalize the knowledge being taught so much that it becomes something that is applicable. Remember Bloom's learning taxonomy, knowledge comprehension, analysis, synthesis, evaluation. So when a student has gone beyond level of knowledge to comprehend something, to be able to analyze something, to be able to now synthesize what he or she has taught, learns into daily activity, we know that teaching session seems to have gone very, very well. I taught them the danger of use of phone touch while cooking. The pupil corrected the parent and she was grateful for it. Interesting story, Tony. Thank you for sharing. So we see that when we teach when we teach something to students in such a way that they learn so well and it's applicable in reality, then there's a lot that can be done. Okay, I am running out of time, so I will not be able to take more questions, more response on that. But then let's go back to where we started from. Now we know that we've all agreed that the most impactful activity is activity that one helps you show parents where the academic strengths and weakness of their child is. Two is that it helps students transfer the knowledge. It helps students, the most powerful activity is an activity that makes sure that ensures that students are able to apply the knowledge learned in the classroom to their daily life. And three, the most impactful activity is the activity that leads to a change in attitude. Should I do, based on what we've all agreed together now in this town hall, we've all agreed that the most impactful activity is an activity that one helps you show parents the reality of their child's academic strength or weakness. 2 is that leads to an acquisition of knowledge that is applicable, in day-to-day life. And 3 is that it leads to a change in attitude, a change in behavior, a change in worldview of the students. Now let's look at, I'm going to share my sheet again, and we are going to mark the activities that we listed earlier based on how much impact we think that it had. So how much impact does writing lesson notes have in achieving the 3 things that we just mentioned earlier? To zoom in, to zoom out. Yep. So we want to vote. I'm going to mark what is very impactful, and not impactful. So if it is very impactful, let's say very impactful is 3. Not impactful is 2. Impactful is 2, and then not very impactful is 1. So can you comment in the chat box, writing lesson notes? Is it a 3, a 2, or a 1? Based on what we just discussed so far. So yeah, so we are voting together. Once I get 3 responses, I would mark it. So writing lesson notes, is it a 3 for very impactful, 2 for impactful, or 1 for not very impactful? Yes. Please do it to drop your messages in the chat box again. Yeah, rating. How do you rate very impactful? You just need to comment with a number. That's all. Comment with a 3, a 2, or a 1. Tony is 3 from Tony, 2 from Peace, 2 from Eniola. So okay, thank you. So I see majority is 2, so we leave it as 2. Thanks for participation, everybody. And let's go to the next one, conducting assessments. Interesting. Ideally, I should divide conducting assessment into 2. I should divide it into creating assessments and then marking assessments. But let's just leave it as conducting assessment. So conducting assessments, is it 3, 2, or 1? Yes, rating. Please do well to comment again. Thanks for participating. Okay, conducting assessments. Is it 3? Yeah, I mean impactful on students. Yes, I mean the impact it has on students based on conversations that we just had. Moshood says it's 3, conducting assessments. 3 from Tony. Okay, I have an overwhelming 3 for conducting assessments. Answering students' questions. Is it a 3, a 2, or a 1? Yes, we are now on answering students. We are now on answering students' questions. So I will start my counting from no, I don't know if Eniola's last response. So Eniola says it's 3. Answer students' question 3. Okay, great. Okay, Eniola, thanks. So from Eniola, I'll count again. When you say this 3, I need one more person to decide. 2, 3. We have a tie. Okay, so general opinion says it's 3. Thank you for participating. And now to the next one, preparing report sheets. How impactful is preparing report sheets? Is it a 3, a 2, or a 1? Preparing report sheets. Let me drop a message. Yes. I'm saying, and this time we're evaluating on the direct impact of that activity, not of the goal generally, but just the activity. What does creating report sheet 2, report sheet 2, report sheet 2, report sheet 2, general opinion report sheet 2. Thank you. Filling communication books. Is it a 3, 2, or 1? Filling communication books. Is it 3 for very impactful? 2 for impactful, and 1 is for not very impactful. Filling communication books. Communication books 3, 2, or 1. So I've seen communication books 2, 2, 1. Yes, can we get 2 more votes for communication books? 1. So we have a tie. Who will break the tie? Communication books. Need 1 more person to vote to break the tie on communication books. We have 2 2s and 1 1 today. Need someone else after Tony to decide what does, how impactful is the activity of filling communication books. Again, for activity that is not very impactful, we give it a 1. Impactful 2, very impactful 3. Yeah. Do we have a final? We need 1 more person to vote on communication books, apart from Tony. Okay, thanks, Adam Skyde, for breaking the tie. Communication books is 1. Oh, I see that we're also trying to vote alongside me. Great. Teaching. Now, this is the act of actually presenting the instruction to the students. How impactful is that? Is it 3, 2, or 1? 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1 for teaching. Want to optimize for time. Okay, Damila 3, 3, and teaching 3. Okay, teaching is overwhelming 3. All right, so I'll just stop on teaching. Let's go to admin meetings. Admin meetings, how impactful is admin meetings? Is it a 3, 2, or a 1? 3 for most impactful, 2 for impactful, and 1 is not very impactful. Admin meetings. Meeting, Tony says meeting 2. Fentola, meeting 2. I can pick, okay, so general opinion is that meeting is 2. All right, club activities, how impactful? 3, 2, 1. And it's actually money, it's not just club, it's monitoring club activities. That's the word. So how impactful is monitoring club activities? Yeah, club 3, 3. Interesting. Interesting. I didn't think that no club was going to take 3. And then finally conducting assembly. How impactful is conducting assembly? Is it a 3, a 2, or a 1? Assembly 3 from Damilola. Yep, all waiting. Trying to speed up for time. 12:56. No. Okay. 3. And okay, I think that assembly 3. How impactful is, remember, impactful is that, yes, remember, we agreed that impact is decided on 1, how well does it help the parents know the academic strengths or weakness of the child? 2, is that how well does it help the students learn in such a way that knowledge is applicable? 3 is how well does it lead to a change in attitude? So these are what we agreed to be impact, earlier. So given that, given that description, how well do you think that conducting assembly as a teacher task solve that problem? Yep. So you can comment in chat box. So just again reply with numbers for conducting assembly 3, a 2, or a 1. We've had one recommendation from Damilola. Can we get few others so we wrap up that phase and then we can look at our sheet and tell us what that means for everybody. Okay. For some reason, I can't see everyone's chats. Is there a chance that uh, okay? While we await other persons, the chat of others, I like to just pause for a moment and wrap up on some of the conversations that we started earlier. So, do I stop sharing? Yeah. Okay. So great. First of all, once again, thanks everybody for uh, thanks everybody for contributing so far. I'll switch back to this to the sheet. We'll also share this link. I think that something that you should do personally. Sit down, think through your 10 activities, 10 most. Look at it daily and say that. Just think about it as think of the 10 activities as what you do within every 1 hour in school. So you look at it and say, the last 1 hour, what have I done? I conducted the assembly, I followed the school boss, I spoke to parents, I did this, I did that. Just list out all of those activities and try to evaluate them on how impactful they are. What we'll find out is that um, from the sheets that we came up with together today, we see that the top two most impactful, um, so the most impactful activities are conducting assessments, answering students' questions, and teaching from what we've done today. Our top three most impactful activity is conducting assessments, answering students' questions, and teaching. What does this mean? It means that if you want to get the best out of your teachings, out of your experience as a teacher, you need to optimize more time, put more resources into a conducting assessments, answering students' questions, and teaching. I know what is interesting is that those are the three activities that we seem to have less time for as a teacher. Yes. Uh, Especially if you teach in the secondary school and where you have only 40 minutes, to teach in a classroom, you have only 40 minutes to complete a session and then allow the next teacher in. How do you create assessment in 40 minutes? How do you answer a lot of students' questions in 40 minutes? In fact, what I see is that most times, let me know if this does not happen to you. Many times we spend a lot of time giving the students the classwork, we write notes, give the note, and then we say time up and just go, okay, I will spend the note in next class. And then you go. And you come back in next class and then you talk about it for 5 minutes and the student have mostly forgotten. And then you continue. Or even let's talk about assessments. Now we've all agreed assessment is a very important part of what you need to do to deliver value as a teacher. But we also know that many times assessment is not done the way it should be. Ideally, assessment, if you are truly conducting assessments, of course, there are two types of assessment. We know about the formative assessment and the summative assessment, right? That you can conduct assessments and I can see your hands up. I'm going to um, put the put the floor open. Now I'm already late. I think we started late. You can conduct assessments before a session to know the level of students' knowledge. And B is that you conduct assessments after a session to know after a session to know how much knowledge level has changed due to the instruction I just delivered. So meaning that best case scenario is that you conduct two forms of assessments in every teaching session. Conduct assessment before the class and then conduct assessments after the session. And second thing is that so that's for assessment. The other part is analytics. Now we know that I really liked what Obaji mentioned earlier. He mentioned that parents are super excited when you tell them the reality of their child's academic strength and weakness, not just when their student pass exam. When you tell them that, ma'am, your boy is good in mathematics, but he seems to be struggling with algebra. If you can master algebra, we'll be able to do this, do this. That deep level analytics is something that we hold our students, something that we hold the parents, and they really want that type of information. And it's also true that it's very difficult to do that with time, given a time frame and given the skill sets that we have. Very difficult to implement that. So it's one of the points where that takes me to the last 2 points I made. We are going to share that article, the article on Pareto Principle. That's a link to this paper, these sheets that we just used, this impact tracking sheet that we just did, so that we can look into it together. But again, what we learned in that article, there are 3 points. One, identify your 20%, which is what we just first did. And we've identified that 120% now, which is conducting assessments and giving conducting assessment and giving feedback. You know, that's one. And that's where our 20% now. Second step is be minimal. Be minimal means that you reduce activities that reduce the time and resources allocated to activities that are not high impact. You know, in fact, when you can outsource it or automate it, you do. And then you put more resources on the activity that has high impact, meaning that how much resource do you put into creating assessments today in your class? How much resource do you put into creating assessments? How much resource do you put into giving parents deep level analytics on what each of their starts with their child? How many of us in the last 3 weeks have called each parent in our class and said, "Hi, Mrs. So. Your child is struggling with this because of this." That level of knowledge, that ability to break down is what parents really, really want. Like class, like an high impact activity. You know, see, most schools know how to help students pass eventually, unfortunately. So whether I was trying to pass or not, it's not a big deal. Is that will you be able to help them achieve mastery at such a level that their parents will be very proud of you? And that's what you should optimize your parenting for. So today you want to say, and then technology can help. For instance, greatly assessment tool, right? Already comes pre-installed with tons of assessment questions that you can use before your class, during your class, or after the class to evaluate the students. And what is even good is that really helps you to break this down into performance level. So every time you really helps you break this down into really helps you send like a weekly analytics report to students, so parents. So parents will be able to tell the knowledge level of their child in every topic, in every subject, and what this helps you to do, for instance, is that I found what I was doing. If I wanted to share a screen with you to give you a sense of some of the ways that really can help you solve for these things that we consider valuable in classroom. So imagine that this is what your parents want. They want a report that looks like this. They want a report that looks like this. And this is a typical child's assessment. They want to know the topic that the child is excelling in, averaging and struggling with. They want you to tell them exactly how this child is. And Gradely can do this for you. Use Gradely in your classroom, for instance. You can use this, and then Gradely will just extend you. So you can send this analytics and then have a conversation with the parent and say, this level of breaking down, helping them to know where their child is at time is something that you definitely want to achieve in your classroom. Also, you can conduct assessments by selecting from a pool of curriculum aligned questions, and that's something that is super super important. So Gradely has like this inbuilt homework tool that allows you to able to create assessments by just creating assessment in few clicks. So instead of spending a lot of time doing assessment, Gradely can help you to automate that. And then finally is that you then now get more time to answer questions. So you see that a lot of us have time to teach, but we don't have enough time to answer questions. And maybe one of the things you can use for that is to use, say, maybe the Gradely class feed, which is like an interactive tool within your class wall where your students can post questions and then you can get answers, feedback from you at any points that you want. I can give a sense of amount of time, so I will not be able to do like a full demo of what Gradely class feed is, but I can share like for you, if you already use Gradely in your school, you can just request for a full demo with your school and I'll be able to just put you through it. But essentially, so I'll stop here to answer questions, but if there is summary of everything we've discussed today, is Pareto Principle means that 20% of your action leads to 80% of the result. So is that for you to apply Pareto Principle, you need to A, identify your 20%, B is that optimize for the 20%. And to identify your 20%, we created an impact sheet. And when we worked on it together, we discovered that teaching, conducting assessments, and giving student feedback. And of course, modifying student attitude are the three most important, three most impactful things that we need to do in a classroom, and they are the three most impactful things. And we mentioned that for you to optimize for them, we can use tools to extend the assessments. We can spend more time creating formative and summative assessment, and you need to spend enough time answering students' questions. I think that will be like the end of my session, and we can maybe take questions. You can drop questions in the chat box, or I can recognize one or two persons. I can see some hands are up. So if you want to ask a question, you don't want to type it, you can maybe just raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Yep. Anybody wants to ask me a question? Just use the hand icon under reactions to just raise your hand like I just did now. And you'll be allowed to ask a question. Or you can also drop a question in the chat box. And I want to especially say thanks for your contribution so far. It's been amazing. This I probably even enjoyed this. Yeah, Mr. Adams, Kayode, you can please unmute yourself and ask your questions. Ask a question rather. Mr. Adam, if you're speaking, your mic is mute. Mr. Adams, we can't hear you now, so maybe we'll go to Hannah. Hannah, you can also unmute and ask a question.
How can you assess a child who is still struggling with speech in a nursery session? Because all you'll be doing is, with what I saw, is been a secondary, upper primary, secondary. Assessing a child still struggling with a speech problem. Can you hear me?
Yes, I heard your question. Strong question. Thank you for asking. So Hannah asked, how do we assess students who still struggle with speech? Is that correct?
Hannah, yes.
Yes.
Great. I think that depends, right? Depending on developmental level, based on level of child, if a child struggling with speech is because the child is not grown. So let me ask, do you think this child has like a learning challenge, or it's just that the child is not old enough to speak?
He's old enough to speak, but he's not, yes, a little challenging. The speech is not clear enough.
Yeah.
If for instance, you want to say, okay, Mrs. Hannah, what are you doing? You just be mumbling words.
Yeah.
So you need to take time. And when you ask him questions, it's as if it's off. He's not even understanding what you're asking. Yeah. Neither can she able to. So assessing such a child, I know one may, such ones also may be on one-on-one method of, but when it comes to assessments, I think there should be a special thing or something unique for those group of people. And at the same time, such a child also lacks this concentration, because I just want to believe they are always vibrating. They want to talk. So the calmness in them to settle, then continue with what they should do. So I don't know if there's any way.
There is actually.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay. There is. So my big guess is that child has some learning difficulty. So we need to consider that child a student with special need. Note that whenever we say student with special need, it does not mean that does not mean that the child is does not have capacity to learn or should not be in a mainstream school. It just means that we need an expert to guide into helping identify how best to support that child. And we need to know our limits as teachers, right? We are not psychologists, so to say. we are not specially trained in identifying learners as a special need. But what we typically do is that you mention it. I know that parents might take it spiritual. If you were at a, I don't know who else was at a teacher training session, 3rd of May this year. One of the things that we did is that we had a session specially focused on this. And it is true that many times when they are learning special needs, they are in normal classes, especially when they're in preschool and nursery classes. So what we typically do is that we work with the parents and we don't tell them that their child has a problem. That might lead to some fighting back. You just mentioned that.
Yeah.
I think that we can get some help. You might be able to do better if you just maybe get an expert to help us recommend how best to get the best from him. And then the parents might ask you, yes, who can we talk to? Right? Then you need to bring a special need expert. We have some of them that are close to us at really. We can point to some of them. They just need to ask some questions or do some observations. Might just be able to, in some cases, they might need to refer you to a doctor if that needs be. But trust me, a lot of early interventions kind of help to save the teacher tons of stress down the road, save the parents tons of disappointments down the road. So that child might need special needs support, and the way to get it is by just encouraging the parents. They're not telling their child is sick. They're just saying that you might be able to get better, get the best of the child if a special need experts look into it. And remember, the child might see there are hundreds of learning disabilities, out there, and there's a chance that even we full functioning adults, we have certain elements, some of it, that even though we are doing great, we could have done a lot better if we got that type of help. There are some things as simple as ADHD. The child is just hyperactive, and you think that children, they like playing. It's not play. It's just that this child has ADHD and can be managed. And if a teacher has learned how to manage it, the child might even be an introverted person. If I can tell. So I think that might be the solution. In that case, in the case where it's a special needs child, you might need an expert to look into it. And I don't know if I answered your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I have another question to ask.
Okay, please go on.
Okay. For these children also in nursery session that are these kinesthetic learners, how far or how can we, to what extent can one take such learning, especially when that child is approaching age 5, age 6? How can kinesthetic learning still continue to be able to bring that child into school appropriate learning environment or curriculum?
So
sitting down, okay.
Yeah, so typically, right? Typically,
okay.
When we say that a learner is an auditory learner or an aesthetic learner or audiovisual learner, it does not mean that the learner cannot learn the other way. It just means that the learner learns best that way. That's one. And two is that the curriculum is so broad that you can't always use the same style to teach all types of topics, right? So, for instance, how much aesthetic can you really do in the chemistry laboratory other than conducting the experiment as recommended? So there are times when it does not matter that it's true that the child prefer this, but not every time that you always have to make everything aesthetic or make everything observation. However, there are cases where you may need to modify even the presentation of the content just to suit that type of learner. So that does not mean that you have to now alter the curriculum or anything, because the child is, which is one of the things we tell teachers, that you need to be broad in your approach, right? Because you found that whenever you use this method for the child learns fast through that method. Then you don't try another method. It's not the best. So even though you found the method that seems to work for the child, you always continue to use other methods every now and then, just so that when you encounter a course content that cannot be taught using that method as easily, then you can switch methods. But ultimately, I think that for kinesthetic students, project-based learning kind of helps a lot as they grow older. When they get projects to work on, and that project, for instance, we are teaching something as basic as an essay in English, and the essay is about, it's just essay writing, but then you want them to write about accidents, and then you tell them to collate, give them a task to collate road signs and times that the road signs have been validated and it led to something within their road. That child, that has not taken, that's normally an essay writing book. That's suddenly make it kinesthetic. And then, of course, what learning style does is increase the interest in the child, but does not necessarily change the learning objective. So the learning objective is still that the child be able to learn writing using correct sentence patterns. However, you've used project method to make the child very interested in it. So you might just be able to mix methods. But I think project-based learning kind of work a lot for kinesthetic learners as a whole.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, Hannah. I'll just read a few questions from the chats. We are way out of time. From Peace, does my application of this principle in class change depending on students? I think that yes, if learning style is a conversation, yes, because at times you might figure out that majority of the students in your class learn based on certain styles or based on certain activities, and you might want to optimize for that in some cases. So yes, there might be some flexibility around the application of the Pareto Principle in your class. Also, it applies also for teaching a particular subject. For instance, there are certain subjects that need to be mastered. See, SSC examination, those that teach students how to pass exams know what past questions look like. I know certain topics that always come out, right? So if you have a class where most of those topics have not been taught, then you have or maybe 50% of those topics have been taught, then you need to optimize for the other 50%, right? So I think the application might differ based on based on previous knowledge of the students, based on general outlook of your students. And the contact be dropped as regards the speech impairment help of ability. Yes, definitely. Peace will please share. We have a group for teachers of students with special needs. You can just mention social manager Peace. We share a link and you join the group and you can ask a question in the group. The group admin is Mrs. Fakorede, and that's her specialty, and she'll be able to help you with it.
You mentioned, but the assembly.
How do you leverage technology? How do you leverage technology to carry the whole class along? I think that you need an LMS that can do that. That's why you have learning management systems, and which is why we know that learning management system has gone beyond just sending a report card home, or just sending one worksheet. It's everything that's encompassed issues in analytics, and that's why we always recommend that schools use Gradely for Schools. They are not using Gradely for Schools today. Should try it for free. You can introduce your school to it. If you think you need us to do a demo, talk to your school management about it, and just request for a meeting. We'll be happy to do. You need us to teach the teachers generally how to use an LMS that shows you more of what the students need to do. Definitely can arrange for that. I think I've run way out of time, so I'll just hand over to Peace Wale at this point. It is.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheyi. If you have enjoyed this session, just like leave a smiley or say thank you to Sheyi in the chat box so that we can all appreciate him. This has been a wonderful, wonderful session. If you are here and you're not part of our community, whether on Instagram or on WhatsApp, and you would like to join, you can also send a message to our chat box and we will put you in as well. Thank you once again so much. We want to make these town halls a more regular event. So if you would like that as well, please let us know. And we would let you know how often we are going to be having town halls. We want to be having them bi-weekly or once a month. So if you could say right now in the comment box which you would prefer